Hi, I'm David Bedella, and you're listening to the Spotlight Podcast on londontheatre.co.uk.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Podcast from londontheatre.co.uk, where we delve behind the scenes and chat to the people who really make the West End tick. This week, as you may have just heard, our guest is David Bedella. He's currently gearing up for the West End opening of And Juliet, the Shakespeare-inspired musical set to the hits of the songwriter Max Martin. We're talking classics like Hit Me Baby One More Time, Backstreet's Back, It's My Life, as well as modern numbers from artists such as Adele, Jessie J, and Ariana Grande. I caught up with David in a bar at the Shaftesbury Theatre where we talked about his role and how it was shaped around him as an actor, what it was like being at the centre of the storm when he played the devil in Jerry Springer the Opera. But first, we started by chatting about how often he gets out and about to see shows while he's performing.
It's the last thing you want to do on your day off. Everyone says, well, you have your matinees you can go to, or the last thing you want to do is go into another theatre and see another show when you're living in the theatre. So I end up not seeing much of anything.
Are you a big musical theatre fan regardless?
I was when I was young. You know, when I was in my 20s, that's when I had the energy to go see everything and buy cast albums and learn songs. I mean, I was just like a sponge. If you ask me anything about theater in the 80s, I can tell you, right down to, who wrote what and what year and what inspired them. I was, I just wanted to take in everything. Now, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Why do you think that is?
Age?
Yeah.
You realize that there's a whole lot of life going on outside of musical theater. And, so you start to expand your horizons. It becomes a very small part of what my life is,
So you mentioned there being into musical theatre when you were in your early 20s. I wanted to go a little bit further back.
Yes.
To Gary, Indiana.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That's where you grew up.
That's where I grew up.
It's possibly the greatest place name I've ever heard. What was it like growing up there? Because obviously you were a stone throw away from Chicago.
Yeah.
So you must have had quite a bustling music scene there as well to get involved with.
Do you know what? We were a very blue-collar family. My dad was a steel worker. My mother was a housewife. Our vision of the world was very small. I went to school, I came home, I played with my sisters in the backyard, and really that was life when I was growing up in Gary. It wasn't until I was 14 years old we moved to a new town adjacent to Gary called Merrillville. And Merrillville had a community theater. It was called RSMT, Ross Summer Music Theater, and all the kids from all the surrounding schools would go there. Didn't matter whether you were particularly talented. Just the fact that you wanted to participate meant you could be in the show. Mm-hmm. And some of the shows were ridiculously cast. I think the first one I did was called Carousel, and it had a cast of 120 kids on stage. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, there was just no room to do anything. Yeah. Just a bunch of people standing around. But that was my first exposure to theater, and it was from there that I grew to love it, and it became my whole world. But I didn't know anything about it when I was living in Gary. No, not at all.
So was Carousel the first time you got up on a stage and performed?
Actually, Bye Bye Birdie was the very first one. And there was a girl named Joy Kane. She was my best friend in, God, what grade would it have been? 7th grade. And she said to me, "What are you doing this summer?" Well, I just moved into the town. "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Not much." And she said, "Do you want to go audition for this musical?" And I literally said to her, "What's a musical?" I didn't know what a musical was. And she says, "You just got to get up and learn a song and go sing for the director and he'll let you in." Like I said, you didn't have to be particularly good. And when I got up to sing, and I don't even know what song it was, I couldn't tell you, I could see that his face started moving. He was intrigued and he was talking to the person next to him and all of that. It all made me nervous. I didn't know what it meant. And he came up to me afterwards and said, "You're a singer." And I said, "No, I'm really not. I don't." And he said, "No, I'm telling you, you're a singer. This is what you should be doing." Now, at 14, when you've never even, thought about performing or anything like that, it was quite a shock. But I decided to embrace it, and my God, it opened up a whole new world.
And then you became the guru of 80s musicals, yeah?
And now I know everything.
So how did you take those kind of next steps from that first audition at 14 to deciding this is what my life's going to revolve around?
Well, when I look back on it, I realized it was a very short journey. But at the time, it seemed to go on for a long time. From 14 to 17, I did the musical, the summer musical, 3 summers in a row. And I started working professionally by the time I was 18. So I just immersed myself, and much to the detriment of my schoolwork. I I failed quite a few classes because I shouldn't be telling this, because I used to forge the music director's name on hall passes. I learned how to do his signature, and I used to forge these passes that would say, "Please excuse David from class. There's work he needs to do in the theater," because we had a theater in the school. And they would accept them. I would forge these, and they would say, "Well, it's up to you, but you're going to miss this and you're going to miss that." And I'd say, "It's fine. I hope you don't mind. I've got the summer musical on, or I've got the play, or whatever it was." And I was never in class, never. My English lit teacher said to me, "I'm going to have to fail you if you don't write a term paper." And I remember saying to her, "Then that's okay, because I know what I'm going to do, and English lit is not it. It's not what I'm going to do." I don't know where I got the cojones to do things like that, but I did, and I guess it served me well, because I wanted so much to be in theater. I wanted to be on stage and doing nothing but. So yeah, within 4 short years, I was working professionally.
And it's a good job it worked as well. Otherwise, you'd failed all your classes.
Yeah, I'd have had nothing to fall back on.
What do you think you would have done if things were a little bit different?
Oh, who knows? I'd have been a hairdresser or something. Well, I only say that because I can cut hair now. It's one of those things I've learned to do through the years. But,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Does that get, maybe if you have someone else doing your hair backstage, are you like, actually, no, you should be doing it like this?
Funny you should mention that. The wigs department here has quite a running joke about the fact that they can never do a single thing. You know, they have to attach my wig every night. Mm-hmm. And the goal is, let's see if we can do it without David giving us one correction. And I try so hard. But inevitably I have to say something if it's not quite right.
Yeah.
And I do.
I'm sure it's quite nice for them to be able to talk to them.
Well, we laugh and play, and I tell them where they're making all their mistakes, and they accept it very
you
graciously.
Get notes, they should get notes. It's all fair. Exactly. So from there, going to work on professionally, you've had quite the career. You did the Jerry Springer opera. Over here, you've been in The Heights, The Producers, Rocky Horror Show, Sweeney Todd as well. Do you have a personal highlight? Is there one production that you've done in the past that you'd like to relive and do all over again? Maybe not change anything, but just relive the experience of doing that show.
I kind of wish that I could relive the Jerry years, because I had no idea how big it was going to be at the time, what a calling card it would become for me and my career. And I kind of think, gosh, I wish my eyes were more open at the time. Mm-hmm. I was continuing on from many years of just enjoying the work, oh, here's my next show, this is interesting, I'm going to pour myself into it, it's great fun, without realizing that it's going to become something that you're forever identified with. Much like, this is ridiculous to say, much like Mark Hamill and his Star Wars years, he never knew that he would be Luke Skywalker forever. Mm-hmm. On a much smaller scale, I tend to be the devil forever. No matter what meeting I take, even in Los Angeles, I'll take a meeting with a producer or a filmmaker, and they'll say, "I saw you in Jerry Springer the Opera. You were amazing as the devil." And I'll think, my God, this musical reached the whole world, and I didn't know it was going to be that.
Did it not feel like a storm while it was happening?
Oh, it did, yeah. But you don't know how big. You don't know, I guess, to what extent you'll be identified with it the rest of your life. And I'd like to just go back and kind of relive all of that and, rethink decisions. And, I will do this because it is going to affect my future, rather than just, loving the work.
Yeah. Because it is a brilliant musical, but obviously that BBC broadcast kind of amplified it.
Yes. Well, it took it to the rest of the world.
I think they had 15,000 people get in touch with them before it was broadcast, and then afterwards that was 45,000 people in total. I can't imagine that happening with a theatre show nowadays. It's enormous. What did it feel like, kind of being in the middle of that? It
was great fun, if I'm honest, because I got to have political conversations and religious conversations. At the time, I was married to a man who was a vicar, And the people protesting on the streets, they could not understand how someone who is professing to be a man of God could allow these two things to juxtapose. And so I was having conversations I never dreamed I would have with people, and in a way given a platform to expand horizons and open ways of thinking. It didn't always work, but I tried, and it was an exciting time.
Was there at no point then that you had maybe your own internal conflict on whether you should be doing this, whether this was a good idea, or you just, it's a role, this is what I'm playing?
Never. I mean, the work of theater and actors and writers is to hold a mirror up to society and show who we are and what we are. It's also an opportunity to allow people who don't live this life to have a window in, to understand it. So always, I think, if it's something that is pushing your limits and asking people to think beyond where they normally do, always it's a good thing. And that's what we were doing.
So when you go into those Hollywood rooms and they say, "Oh, you're the devil," you're like, "Yeah, I am. Yeah, that's me."
That's my job.
So we're backstage at the Shaftesbury Theatre now, where you're in previews for And Juliet. You became a big fan of musical theatre during those kind of college days. What about Shakespeare? How big on your Shakespeare were you?
I'll be honest with you, I've always felt that it was beyond my capabilities. And I've had lots of people arguing with me through the years and saying things like, do you not think that the depth of emotion and control of language that you use with Sweeney Todd isn't exactly the same? I suppose it is. But, now that I'm here, there are people who have been raised on Shakespeare. The English, it's in their blood. It's, from the time you learn to speak, you know who Shakespeare is. We didn't quite have that in the U.S. And so I've never really gone in that direction. I'd like to, and I know it's not too late. I'd like to think I'm only halfway through my career when you look at people like Christopher Plummer, and I've got a few years left to tackle the big ones. So, we'll see. So when you heard of this project, putting Romeo and Juliet to pop music, what did you think before you were offered the role? Were you like, "Oh, that's a good idea," or were you skeptical? I got involved with this through Luke Shepard, who is our director, and I didn't really give it a lot of thought. Basically, what happened was he called and said, "There's a role in this play. I'm pretty much sculpting it around who you are and what you do. Will you come sing it for me? You happen to be in LA while I need you to be in LA. Can you take a week and come sing it?" And so I approached it very much as a singer.
Okay.
I thought, I'm going to go in and I'm going to sing this thing, and it's going to be fun. And at the end of it, I'll have a little paycheck. And I did that, but a few days into it, I realized this role is really fun and really different from anything I've ever done. He asked me to use a French accent. And I said, "I'm begging you to not make me do an authentic French accent." And he said, no, it should be a caricature.
Yeah.
It should be over the top and silly and fun. And I discovered that everything that I spoke in that accent was simply funny, just by virtue of the accent. No offense to the French, to my interpretation of it. So I didn't dig deeply into the Shakespearean link. More so, I approached it as just music, and I was helping out. Once we got to the second workshop, which happened here in London, I fell in love with the complexity of how they made pop music melt into Shakespeare. I thought these connections are just so smart. Yeah. Everything about it is clever, and I don't know how. I don't know how he and David Westreed did it. I don't know.
Tell me a little bit more about your character then, because within this story of Romeo and Juliet, at the end, Juliet doesn't kill herself. She goes off. She kind of takes the story to herself. Where does your character fit in?
Well, she and the nurse go on an adventure, and they go to Paris. And in Paris, one of the first things they stumble upon is a very grand house. And there's a party going on. There's a club, actually. There's a party going on. And Lance Dubois is a wealthy Frenchman with several sons. And his youngest son has yet to find a partner and get married and start life. And so he throws this ball in an effort to get his son acquainted with someone who he can fall in love with. And it's there that all the connections are made with Juliet and the nurse. And that's probably all I should tell you.
Ooh. Well, I was going to go along the music route. I think one of the first scenes we see with you is your first number a Katy Perry number.
And there's something I thought I'd never do. A Katy Perry number. Yeah, it is. Teenage Dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Who else would give me the chance to sing A Teenage Dream? I mean, really.
There are lots of songs like that. This musical is full of songs that everyone will know. Obviously, they're from the last 2 decades, where kind of Max Martin's career has, he's written songs for everyone. But no one, I didn't know who Max Martin was until this musical came around. Did you?
No. You know songs by Backstreet Boys. That's probably his earliest stuff that I knew. But you don't ever stop to think who wrote this song. You just assume it's Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
And they had nothing to do with it. It was him behind it. So many of their big hits, were his. Yeah, I didn't know who he was.
Are there any songs in the show that you wish were yours that you could sing?
Well, I'll tell you what my number one favorite is right now, and it changes from day to day. They do a mashup of One Less Problem Without You and I Can't Feel My Face When I'm With You. I think these songs are brilliant. The lyrics and how clever they are is so fun, but the fact that they've gotten them to mix together in such a way, showing Romeo's side and Juliet's side, I just think it's brilliant. Yeah, and I want to be in it. Every night I stand in the wings and I wish I was in the number.
How involved has Max been with those kind of mashups, or has that all been handed over to an orchestrator? Because he's been integral to this musical. He's been all over the rehearsal process.
Yeah. I think a lot of that stuff happened before we got involved. So I don't really know. I know that he is extremely involved in the production of the sound. He, when we were recording the album, it's all in his hands. And he decides, I want a little more of this here and pull back on that and, phrase it this way. He's sculpting, like a true artist. He's sculpting what the end product sounds like. I've never felt in such secure hands in my life. And he said to me, because I worry about doing studio work. I'm a stage singer, and it's quite different. And he said to me, one of my greatest gifts is getting the exact performance out of you that you and I will be proud of. So sit back and relax. It's in my hands. And I did. I just thought, okay, it's not going to get better than this. It was a real treat.
Good. Pulling back the lens a little bit, we could do any production of Romeo and Juliet and kind of modernize it. What are the benefits of setting it to this modern music and evolving the story rather than just doing the same old story again and again?
Well, I suppose in this, it's so specific to the age we're living in. We are in the era of female empowerment. With the Me Too movement and the way things are shifting politically, everything. The world is waking up to the fact that women have not just been oppressed, but been abused throughout the years. And the time for that to stop is now. And so this musical is all about that. It's all about waking up to women making their own choices and leading the lives they've always wanted to. That power is given to Juliet, but more importantly, I think so much of the story centers around Anne Hathaway, who is Shakespeare's wife. She's the one who says, I have to watch all of this happen, and I know that I'm powerless, and I wanted to give Juliet that same power. So really, it's an awakening for her, and it's a completion. I can't tell how the story turns out, but it's a completion in her desire to make a difference for women. That has to happen now. If this were centered around any other theme, I don't think it would be working as well as it does. And it's educational for men. Oh God, we really do that, and we really need to wake up. It's great.
Especially the Will Shakespeare character.
Yeah.
I think if you're a man, you can see yourself in that, which I'm sure many will. You will probably take a step back.
And the thing is, the musical is so clever in the writing that it doesn't make men feel bad about themselves.
Yeah.
It simply makes you want to do better and want to be better for women's sake and for your own sake. Because we'd be in trouble if it was a men-hating, men-bashing show. It just wouldn't work. But it has you feeling celebratory about what's possible for everybody, all genders.
I hope you're enjoying our chat. David was a really warm and engaging interviewee, so I hope that's coming across as you listen. I just wanted to drop in and let you know that if Anne Juliet sounds like your kind of show, you can book tickets right now at londontheatre.co.uk. But let's get straight back into the podcast, as we're about to put David to the test with 10 quickfire questions that he has to answer as fast as he can. Are you ready?
Okay.
Favourite ever production?
Of whose? Of mine or ever? Of mine.
Yeah.
This one. And Juliet.
What's your interval drink?
Pepsi, Coke.
Who's your stage idol?
Eric Idol. No, that's a joke. Who's my stage idol? God, I don't have a stage idol. I don't know. Do I have to have one? Can we pass?
Yeah,
we'll go
pass.
back.
What's your biggest passion outside of theatre?
Cats and dogs.
The last film you watched?
I don't watch it. I'm fully Game of Thrones right now, so I'm never watching movies.
That's fine, we'll take that.
Okay.
Your favourite theatre in London?
I'm discovering the Shaftesbury. I'd never worked here before. I've worked in most of the others. I love it. It's cool. Yeah.
Your favourite Max Martin song?
I'm gonna say "Show Me Love."
A role you've always wanted to play?
Sweeney Todd, but I did it. That was the main one.
It's fine, we'll take that. And then the best director you've ever worked with?
Oh, I cannot. I will not. I'd be in so much trouble. There are two that would just kill me.
Okay. I'll stop it there. That's fine. 1 minute 20.
Those are the worst answers ever. My God.
Stage Idol was one that stumped you.
Stage Idol.
There's no one from maybe when you were growing up that you would see on stage and think, that's who I want to be. No?
No.
That's not necessarily a bad thing,
I don't think there was anyone that I wanted to be.
No?
No. I always wanted to be a dancer. I used to watch this show called The Carol Burnett Show. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it.
She was a famous comedian
Uh-huh.
back in the 70s. And she had these Ernie Flatt dancers. It was a corps of dancers. She'd come out and do a comedy skit, and then in between, the dancers would come out and do a big dance number, and then she'd be, while she was getting ready for her next. And I always wanted to be an Ernie Flatt dancer. But that was my only aspiration, and then after that, I just started working. This is not someone that I wanted to be, mm-hmm. But when I was a kid, there was a show called Juliet, a TV series, and it starred Diane Carroll. And she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She was the first black actress to have her own television series. So she broke down many doors in Hollywood. And she played a single mother raising a son. She was a nurse. All these, firsts that were happening on television in 1969. And I just loved her. I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Cut to 40 years later, I'm standing on stage singing duets with her, mm-hmm. night after night. We toured with a show called Almost Like Being in Love. It was basically Diane Carroll in concert. And that was the most astounding moment for me. To somebody that at 8 years old I was watching on television, I was suddenly a peer with. We were standing on stage singing If Ever I Would Leave You. She got mad at me once during a sound check, because I kept smiling while we were singing this love duet. And she said, "Stop the music, stop. What is it? Can I just ask, what is it you're smiling at?" And she was really irritated by it. And I said, "I'm sorry, I just can't believe I'm singing a duet with you." And she smiled and she said, "My boy." And from that moment forward, I could do no wrong. In fact, I was the only person in her life ever to get away with calling her Dee Carroll. She would not allow that.
So everybody. There wasn't even a split second there where you thought, she looked at you like that and you thought, "Oh, I'm in trouble."
I did, often, but she was so good to me, and we overcame all the boundaries she had set up for all the other boys. The other boys had to call her Ms. Carroll, and I was backstage calling her Dee Dee. "Dee Dee, are we going to do?"
You were the favourite.
I was the favourite.
So let's pull it back to Anne Juliet, your favourite theatre in London. You're discovering the Shaftesbury.
Yes. And I guess it's because they're doing so many, what do they call it? Renovations around the theater. They've also got this plan to get rid of the street right out in front of us, and it's going to become a pedestrianized park, mm-hmm. where there'll be tables and a little cafe, and they're going to extend the foyer so that, because right now it's quite small, extend it so that there's extra bars and extra, an underground area for people to go sit and have drinks. It's going to be beautiful, and what's here now is amazing. And then you walk upstairs, and there's a whole new section back there. How do you build a building on top of a building? But there's new offices, and it's just beautiful. I love what they're doing.
And inside the auditorium, we just walked across the stage to get into this room here,
Yes.
to the bar. And you have this enormous screen, the confetti everywhere, and some of the set pieces you have in the wings are huge.
Yeah.
It's a real production.
It really is. It's so big.
Yeah.
And their use of LED screens is incredible. The animation behind us is like I've never seen before. I just love what they're doing. But they're still retaining the flavor of this building that's been here for how many years? I don't even know what year it was built, but I'm guessing quite a few.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for
It's been really nice. Thank
taking
you.
the time.
Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap. I hope you've enjoyed listening to our chat as much as I did having it. And if David's piqued your interest in Juliet, make sure you get down to the Shaftesbury Theatre and see what it's all about. You can book your tickets now with londontheatre.co.uk. While you're here, make sure you leave us a review and a rating on whatever podcast catcher you're using to listen to this on. Or why not delve into our back catalogue and listen to some of our previous episodes with the likes of Rachel Tucker, Adam Gillan and Giles Torrera. But until next time, bye-bye.